Shall we let people guess what a flecatorium is? A lot of them will know. Some of you will know what a flecatorium is. Some of you will have experienced the delights of a flecatorium.
You wrote two particular poems that I felt quite drawn to, and one was Inverkeithing 1952 and Fife Child of the 1950s. And when I was reading them, I felt it was very much a reflection to as you were at that time and your understanding of that time. Shall you tell us about them?
It's strange. The one about Inverkeithing is basically about our memories of our childhood and how much further back they go. And we lived in Inverkeithing for a while in the early 1950s, and there's a lot of photographs of me that have survived from that time. Me in 1952, you know. There wasn't all that much of me, and I had bare hair on my head as well. But I keep on wondering, and this is what the poems are all about. Am I kidding myself on? You know, how far do I really remember as far back as that, or how far is it just simply the accumulation of these images on these photographs that's giving me the illusion that
it's actually memory?
So it's an interesting question, you know, memory in relation to photography, you know, and your family snaps and so on. Also, I think we tend to retrospectively think of a particular period in our life in its public context, and all the political world events that were going on. So that tends to colour our perceptions of our own past, especially our distant past.
And we don't.
And also we tend, you know, my memories are often in black and white because of these photos.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's that looking back and that reflection, and you're not really realising its history until it's past, because it's such a present memory.
Yeah, well, I find it something very interesting. Just the other day, one of my favourite places in Denmark is this open air museum. In Danish, it's called the Gamle By, which means the old town, and it's actually an open air museum where they've assembled buildings. Historical buildings throughout the centuries, and reconstructed them in this park, you know, for people to enjoy, great for kids as well as adults. And I'd not been there for a long time, but I was reading that they've since extended it to include buildings from the 1970s. And I see this picture of a family in 1974, and you know, the guys wearing bell-bottom boots and so on, you know, and this young family, they look like a bunch of hippies.
Yeah.
And I think 1974. Well, I was in my early 20s then. I mean, maybe to you, you know, you would see that as history, but to me, it's something I've lived through. So it's just sort of interesting to see how this is being perceived.
Different perceptions.
As history, you know, something that, you know, for me in my generation is
that was
living,
that was our life. That was our life, yeah.
You know, in 1974, you know, we just seemed we were in our 20s and just being daft and silly and all the rest of it, as you do, you know, when you're a university student.
What does reading mean to you?
Well, I read, obviously I've had to read a lot for professional reasons, but obviously that would not be enough. Well, to expand my consciousness, to expand my awareness of the world. You know, reading it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of second-hand, third-hand acquisition of experience. But if you can relate your reading to your life experience, I think that's very healthy. it gets your life experience into some kind of perspective. And also it's good to be taken out of yourself. Reading is doing something that is not you. And I've got the same philosophy of writing. You and I have spoken about this before. I don't, on the whole, write autobiographical stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people do, and that's great. But for me, I like to be detached from what I write about. I don't really like to include myself, on the whole, in what I write.
Do you find that that's the beauty of creating art, though, that you can choose to take that direction? There's no rules, there's no conceptions, there's no societal pressures. It's you and the page and what direction you want to go. You're almost like creating your own world. Yeah.
Except it's not me. As I say, it's trying to do something that is not you. It's taking you out of yourself, really. So I like that idea of detachment. It's your material, but you don't involve yourself personally in it. You take an objective attitude to your characters and the way that they interact. And to a certain extent, actually, what makes it all the more not yourself is the way that the material itself will develop its own dynamic. Quite independent of your will.
Yeah.
So when you're actually writing, various things will occur to you that didn't when you first sat down to write. So what happens then, I think, is that there's a kind of interaction between this stuff that comes to you unbidden, as it were, and that interacts with your will and the way that you want it to go. So there's a kind of interaction there.
So another partnership, if you like.
Another partnership, exactly. Yeah. And again, it bears out, I think, the J.M. Singh quote that all art is a collaboration. It's not just you. It's not just your ego. It's all the stuff that comes to you from other people, from your life experience, and from your imagination. And imagination, that's the most magical thing of all. The French poet Baudelaire called it the queen of the faculties. It's something it mixes emotion with intellect, but then it goes beyond these two. It's
and becomes something else entirely.
It becomes something else. It's another psychological faculty, I think.
Now, you mentioned that you were the first librarian at the Scottish Poetry Library. What do libraries mean to you?
Good Lord, I think we all need them. Even more, I would say, today. I mean, there's an awful lot of people saying that because there's so much stuff on the internet and so many books that you can get on Kindle and so on, that we're getting information from all over the place.
And immediately.
That somehow, we don't need libraries anymore. I think we need them all. There's all the more reason because there's just so much crap on the internet. There's just so much that you cannot rely on. And there's fake news. This is not to condemn the new technology. I mean, the technology itself can be used for good or ill. It's what we make of it. But we need, I think, a combination of the 21st century methods of getting our information, getting our culture, if you like, together with the traditional methods. So we're always going to need books, and there's a kind of buzz from
that first turning over that page, the cover,
the feel of the book, especially if it's an attractively produced book. You don't get that buzz from just seeing something on a screen.
And I think there is that attraction of being away from a screen, because so much of our lives, like say nowadays, it's that phone in your hand. It's almost like you're going to get attached. But I think there's a real beauty about having a book and having it in front of you and just being.
Yeah. And you don't need to switch it on. It's just
it's just
physically there.
Yeah.
When you can put your computer on, and invariably the damn thing doesn't work. It doesn't come up.
Yeah.
And I often tried swearing at my computer, but that somehow doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't improve my language.
Doesn't
Except when I write a beautiful poem. No, it's indifferent to that as well. Hopefully the public isn't.
Tell us about your tenure at the Scottish Poetry Library. What was that like?
Well, it was odd. I mean, it was said at the time that this was something that Scotland needed, and that it was a result of the best in the Scottish imagination in a country that didn't always value imagination. I mean, I had, as I said, I was a bit of a late developer. I mean, I came to Scottish literature quite late. I mean, did go to lectures at Aberdeen University on Scottish literature, but it wasn't my main interest until I was well into my PhD. And the times when I would get bored with what I was doing for my PhD, so I had to have all these other interests. So Scottish literature was one of them. And I thought, well, once I get my PhD, I will really get into Scottish literature seriously. So I did, and certainly getting the job at the Scottish Poetry Library helped me do that. So again, I was in a situation where it was both a learning and a teaching situation, because I could make use of my existing knowledge to, I knew what I wanted to acquire for the library stock. There were a lot of donations as well, and that made me aware of what I did not know. I met real life poets in the flesh, and I thought, well, maybe I could try some of this stuff myself, get beyond all the doggerel that I wrote when I was a lot younger. So I mean, that's really what got me writing poetry myself. So it was a process again of this sort of interaction of passing on my knowledge to other people, and in turn acquiring it from other people. And this dialogue, this reciprocity that I keep talking about. So by the time that I was ready to hit itchy feet, that was 1992. I was ready for a change, and I felt that what we had done so far, the library was becoming a success. We didn't get everything right. We made a lot of mistakes, but it was a pretty pioneering venture. So inevitably you get some things right, and you do something that's inspired. But you also make mistakes as well. It's all the learning. It's the learning process. But what had been felt for a long time was that there were lots of Scottish literary magazines at the time. There's not so many now because of the internet. But that was at that time, and I think still to a certain extent is. That would be the first port of call for a poet wanting to get their work published. So if the editors liked their stuff, it would appear in the magazine. So they could build up a reputation that way, towards getting their first book out, because people had already seen their stuff in the magazines. But I mean, there were a lot of people who were very good poets who, for one reason or another, didn't have their first collection out, partly for financial reasons. Maybe the publishers didn't want to take on something new and avant-garde for fear they would lose money, or all sorts of things, or because maybe the poet had a day job and didn't have time to get their stuff together from the magazines. So there was a lot of good stuff that was scattered in the magazines, and people would be interested in these poets. So we felt there was a need for a